Well, hello there, PJ here, and got an update on the SARS-CoV-2 variant. So this is from the CDC, and I started working on filming this last month, and since then they have an update. I want to click on it, I go to this over here, and it doesn't say anything new. It just, they put in a couple more fear words, but the information is about the same. So we'll go with the one I annotated, the PDF. But you can find it yourself here, right up here. You can see the link to this page with the current information. So now we go down to the executive summary. Well, first of all, they say implications of the emerging SARS-CoV-2 variant, but they don't need to use the word emerging. But they feel the need so much that when they rewrote it and they updated it, they just started with emerging, because emerging is a fear word, and non-science people see that word and they get scared, and CDC is part of that. So anyways, don't get me started. So here's the summary. A new variant strain it contains a series of mutations, has been described. So just look at these words. I mean, you can read between the lines by just reading the actual words. More transmissible than other circulating strains. So this isn't the only one. There's lots of them, which we'll get to later. And that's no surprise. All viruses do this. Better understand how it might be transmitted, whether currently authorized vaccines will protect people against it. So they're already talking about variants and discussing whether the vaccine people are getting now, vaccines, there's 2 out, the third is on the way in this country, whether it's even going to work against this thing. This variant specifies that it is in the spike protein, which is characteristic of SARS-CoV-2. And then this kind of variant may bind more tightly to the ACE2, and it's unknown whether that tighter binding, if true. And then they get down to a study they did on ferrets, which just cracks me up. Every time they talk about animals in a human study or a human drug or human vaccine in this case, it's so unscience, just the opposite of science. It should just leave out any names of any animals and only talk about human information they have. It's just insane how they do this. And then down here, what about other mutations of this variant? SARS-CoV-2 mutates regularly, acquiring about 1 new mutation in its genome every 2 weeks. Good Lord. Okay, again, that's normal, like I said before, but most people don't know this. They're getting a vaccine for the old virus that's probably gone by now. It may or may not work against the new virus, and that's what this is discussing. The vaccine that everybody's rushing to get now could be obsolete. And then talks about its ability to evade vaccine-induced immunity. So they're saying this virus would likely need to accumulate multiple mutations in the spike protein, not just this mutation in the spike protein, to evade immunity induced by vaccines or by natural infection. Interesting they even mention natural infection in there, but they kind of have to cover their butt. And they say the virus would likely need to accumulate multiple mutations in the spike protein. Well, they've discovered one, but they said earlier it happens every 2 weeks, and it's been around a long time now. So chances are, Now getting back to this vaccines or by natural infection, the only time they mention it, and then they come back away from it, natural infection gives natural immunity with a broad range of antibodies, broader than a vaccine can do, because God did a better job with our immune system than man can. And so they just kind of throw it in there and walk away. And then they say, among these possibilities, the ability to evade vaccine-induced immunity. Then again, they don't bring up the natural thing. Natural immunity, not a concern, because it's better. The ability to evade vaccine-induced immunity would likely be the most concerning, because once a large proportion of the population is vaccinated, listen to this, this blew my mind. There will be immune pressure that could favor and accelerate emergence of such variants by selecting for escape mutants. Accelerate emergence of such variants. Then they say there's no evidence this is occurring. And most experts believe escape mutants are unlikely to emerge because of the nature of this virus. Most experts, unlikely. See the words they're using? They have no idea, or they do, and they're just trying to skirt around the truth. So look into escape mutants as well. And if you Google it, you will see something like, actually, if you Google it, you would not see a screen like this, because I use DuckDuckGo, and DuckDuckGo doesn't filter messaging and narratives based on what they believe like Google does. So go to DuckDuckGo.com, type in escape mutants here like I did, and you'll see this list come up. And all the major news outlets have the same, either the same headline or the same first paragraph, because they're all getting their information from the same source. The 6 families that own all of the media, pretty much on the globe, or AP, again, owned by them. It's unbelievable. But yeah, look into it for yourself, because that's another Pandora's box you could open up, and a rabbit hole to fall down. It's fascinating. And that's all I have to say for this, because, I'm just keeping it short and just getting the information out there with as little of my opinion as possible and as much information for you to research as possible. So you're not just out there listening to everybody on the news, especially, and believing everything they say, but thinking, I wonder, that sounds weird. No, I don't understand that. I better look that up and check it out for yourself, because literally your life could depend on it. So, and now it's talking about potential consequences for mutation, ability to spread more quickly, but it's also more evidence that it's less virulent. And then I have a note here to see my previous YouTube on this, because months ago, I talked about a SARS-CoV-2 variant that they had announced. So saw this coming. And like they said above, every couple of weeks. Anyways, so there's no evidence that it produces a more severe illness. There is evidence that it produces a less severe illness. But again, fear words, they don't want to say that, because that could potentially calm people down. So they use more severe. It's very subtle Jedi mind tricks, but it's a very different thing to say there's no evidence that this produces more severe illness than there is to say, so far we've discovered it's less severe. Doesn't that sound different? But it's the same thing. They're saying the same thing. That would be the same thing, because that's the truth. And then it says, most PCR tests have multiple targets to detect the virus, such that even if a mutation impacts one of the targets, the other PCR targets will still work, aka cycle threshold and detection of past remnants of all sorts of colds and flus, coronavirus bugs you've had in the past. It'll pick those up, because the PCR is way too sensitive, and there's really no standards between testing facilities. And then I have a note here, see my previous YouTube on that, because I did one on that too, to understand cycle thresholds and accuracy of the test. And then here, they just kind of mention this and then move on. Decreased susceptibility to therapeutic agents such as monoclonal antibodies. Okay? Then they don't say anything else. They just want to throw it in there and then move on. And so you don't look into what that means, monoclonal antibodies, because just Wikipedia it. Use the left Wikipedia information and find it out for yourself, because that's a super creepy Pandora's box. You can see it here. Just type it in. You'll see this. It'll come up. It'll bring it up, and you'll see it talks about cloning, about chimeric antibodies, about transhuman, trans animal stuff. Check it out. I could go all day on that topic. And I can see why they don't talk about it like the other ones. They don't expound on it at all, because they want you just to think in your brain, move along, nothing to see here, so you don't look into it. So definitely look into it. And then the last thing is the whole idea of immune enhancement of COVID-19, polyclonal hyperimmune globulin therapy and vaccine development. Big words, scientific journal. But the bottom line here that I want to leave you with is, when you read the ingredient list, like in one of my previous videos where I talked about that and read you the FDA inserts and talked about the very general terms they're using, they're also leaving out ingredients and not listing them. You can see here, I highlighted this article. You can see the link here up above. And they just say that vaccine candidates, they're talking about primarily Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, encompass a large diversity of vaccine platforms, including mRNA, DNA, nanoparticle, subunit, and viral vectors. There's some more stuff to look into. It's not what you see on the mainstream. There's way more to it than that. And if you don't research it all for yourself and come to your own truth and your own safety level and health risk level, and just run out and believe the mainstream, everything they say, or me, don't believe me either. Don't believe either of us. Look into it for yourself so you don't just run out and blindly get this Frankenshot. And then if you do, you don't have anybody to blame, because either you didn't look into it and you just went and got it trusting, or you looked into it and made an informed decision and got it anyways. God bless you. Or you looked into it and found out that you shouldn't get it. And that's great too. But the choice should be yours, and it should be an informed choice, not listening to me, not listening to mainstream, not listening to anybody, but using tools like this, information that we give you, to look into it yourself. And then fact check, like I did with the video of the CBS professor that was talking about how awesome the vaccine was for everybody. So there you go. And just trying to put it out there so people look into this for themselves. And thanks for watching, and like and subscribe for more info like this, and we'll see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.
And that's all I have to say about that.